much for taking the time to talk to me today, Carol. Obviously, I'm aware that you work for Amey, so it'd be helpful if you could perhaps just give some context in terms of what your role is and how big the organisation is for anybody who doesn't know.
Yeah, so Amey is a services organisation and we've been working all the way through the pandemic. We are a 2.5 billion turnover organisation with about 16,000 employees, and we provide essential services, roadworks, utilities, waste collection, and we also have a consulting business, but we've largely been at work through the whole pandemic. My role was HR Director for Highways and Waste Collections, but through the pandemic, I've been the Group HR person responsible for navigating us through all of the HR issues in the pandemic.
Did you actually have a sort of team or of different people, or was it just purely headed up by yourself?
So we very quickly pulled together almost like a crisis management team, and that was made up of a core team with people from each of the relevant functions, so from operations, from group strategy, from safety, from HR, and we made sure that we had effective representation across the business. But we were really quite a small team, and then we pulled on resources as we needed it through the pandemic. We kept it small so that we could be very agile in decision making, because things were changing by the hour at the beginning of the pandemic. So we had to keep very, very close to each other and just keep that ability to change decisions very, very swiftly.
So I don't know whether you'd be comfortable to share this with me, but what would you say has been the most difficult or challenging aspect for you personally in a business context, obviously?
It's really been about keeping people safe and knowing that the decisions that you make have a direct impact on those individuals who are working on the front line, because the virus is completely unknown. We're working with something that we've never come across before. So we're making decisions about something that we've never understood before. And we've had to really just use our best judgment on how to keep people safe, how to keep people at work, provide those services for our clients, navigate through some of the issues that we had with clients turning off some services and reducing revenue, but still keep people in work. We also had to remove people from offices overnight, almost overnight. We took almost 6,000 people out of offices and asked them to work from home. So we've had to make some very quick decisions and just make it happen. And in an organisation of 16,000 people, we're very bureaucratic, and being agile like that is just completely almost juxtaposition to how we'd normally work.
Yeah, so it pushed you into. So yeah. Of the 16,000, how many of those would you say, 10,000 blue collar workers, would you say?
Probably around 10,000 blue collar workers, and about 1,000 additional workers who would normally work administratively out of depots. And then the balance of the people who worked from home would generally be support workers. So
in terms of the last 6 months then, has your role really been focused on COVID, or have you still been doing the day job?
Well, initially I was still trying to support highways and waste collections and also COVID, but that became impossible because the volume of work just for COVID and the pandemic, I mean, we were all working ridiculous 12, 13-hour days, just trying to keep up with all the latest changes. And also trying to support a business unit was almost impossible. So we put a temporary structure into the Highways and Waste Collections business unit to allow me to be freed up just to support the Group HR Director, because of course we changed our Group HR Director as well in February, March time. So it was all very new. So we'd picked up the Group HR function as well as trying to navigate through the pandemic. So it was an interesting time.
I think you're aware that I've been doing this as a sort of project, talking to different organisations, and I think one of the key themes here is the 12, 14-hour days that staff had to put in.
Yes.
And probably not necessarily seen from the outside, really, the work on HR, because HR in reality has been at the front of this, hasn't it, in terms of knowing how to navigate and what decisions to make. So did you furlough any employees?
We did, yeah. We furloughed, we only furloughed about 750 in the end, because we are providing essential services. Not many of our services were switched off, and they were predominantly switched off in the utilities area. We had some highways services turned down, a little bit in consulting, but predominantly in the utilities provision. So whilst we only turned down about 750, actually there was a lot of work that went into that, just to understand, you know, what the furlough rules were, how to do it, how to communicate with employees, keep in touch with employees, get that right, because again, nobody had ever done that before. And every time the government published guidelines, they changed them. So, you know, we were talking to people about what to do and how to do it, and almost within hours it was changing. So, you know, every time we talked to the line managers, we were having to say, look, we know we told you this yesterday, however, there's been a change and now we need to do it this way. So it must have been very frustrating for them, but there was nothing we could do about that.
No, I mean, we were all on the same journey.
We were.
Right.
Yeah.
So are there any positives that you can see for the business that COVID has brought about? I mean, you mentioned about business being very bureaucratic, and you've got a global HRD. Has she had a different impact? Well, obviously an impact on the business, but has her style been different in any way?
Yeah, so our new CEO, Amanda Fisher, she's brought a completely different way of working. So we've moved from what was essentially almost command and control style of leadership, which for our organisation worked at that time, to a very much empowering style. So her guiding principles are empower, engage and excel. And so she believes that if you empower people, engage them in everything that they're doing, they will excel. And actually we found through the pandemic that was true. So those people who were able to work from home and were in control of their own hours, their own way of working, we saw that productivity went up. Where we could measure productivity in the shared service centres, in our call centres, the productivity absolutely went up. And our engagement, we did a pulse survey every month to check in with people, and our engagement scores did not dip at all. In fact, they remained very steady, and we were able to tailor our wellbeing strategy to what was coming out of those surveys, because we found that we needed to really accelerate what we were doing on wellbeing, because people were really struggling through the pandemic.
One of the things I think you showed me when we spoke was also that Amanda uplifted everybody's wages, didn't she? Yeah,
she did. So she believes that we should be paying a fair wage, and she lifted everyone up to the real living wage. So that's quite difficult for a services business to do. Not all of our clients are prepared to make that payment, but she, irrespective of whether the client was prepared to pay for it or not, she has lifted everyone up to the real living wage. Even apprentices will be paid on qualification the real living wage. So for our apprentices, they're paid the adult national living wage on start, and they'll be paid the real living wage as they qualify. And as we bring in degree apprentices, they start on a salary of £19,000, which is really a significant step in the right direction. Brilliant. But she also made the decision to lift people out of SSP. So
yes, you said
for
that
COVID,
to me,
for COVID related illness, we paid full pay. We did not want anybody to feel that they had to come to work if they had COVID, and we did not see any spikes in absence that didn't mirror the country's trajectory of illness. So what that demonstrates is that we can actually trust our frontline employees to do the right thing.
Yeah, and that, but I mean, it's a real testament to the organisation to do that, I think. And then
absolutely.
And you know, again, as you're aware, I've spoken to lots of organisations, and I don't know anybody else who's put either the salary, you know, the increase in pay rates, or the full pay if people
Yes.
are shielding. So you mentioned about doing pulse surveys. So how has the business supported its employees over the last 6-7 months?
So we've run a lot of wellbeing initiatives. So every month we've had something different on wellbeing. So we've used those surveys to tailor what it is that we've needed to do. So what we found is that people were feeling, probably around 24% of people were feeling more stressed than normal. So we've run a lot of wellbeing initiatives to help people manage mental health and stress. We've expanded our employee assistance program out to friends and family. So if people live in the same household, they can access the employee assistance program. So we've extended that and published that. We ran wellbeing festivals tailored just for young people, because we recognise that, you know, we've got a lot of young people living in shared housing, so we're very concerned about them. We also made it clear that we would open up offices for people who were struggling to work from home. So for whatever reason, you know, some people might not be in a safe space at home, or they may be in a shared house and they just haven't got the space to work effectively. If they came to us and asked for us to make space available, we would open up spaces, find them places and depots to work, so that actually they felt that they could be at their best. And actually a lot of people took us up on that. I was involved in helping somebody to work who lived in Oxford, and we got them a space in Swindon, and we paid their travel costs because we didn't want them to be out of pocket. Because, you know, at this time people were really struggling financially. We also ran some financial wellbeing sessions with a partner, because one of the key areas that people were struggling with was finances. So they were being honest about that. So we ran some really insightful, actually, sessions on how to manage your money, because some people have never really been taught how to manage money. No.
It might be common sense to some people, but it's not for others. And it's
absolutely,
isn't it, that can have such a big impact.
Yeah. We also, although we didn't have, before masks were mandatory, we also provided every employee with a mask, one of the nanotech masks, which are meant to be the most effective ones, because we felt that we wanted to give something back. So we used a social enterprise to source them, and we used homeless people to pack the masks, because we wanted to support social enterprises. And with the mask, we sent out our wellbeing brochure. We developed a brochure that pulled together everything that we do for wellbeing, so that those people who can't access our online services could actually have a paper copy in the post with their mask that demonstrated to them how to access any of our services if they were struggling. So not only did they have a mask that they could wear themselves or actually give to a vulnerable member of their family, that was, you know, provided for them before it became mandatory, then they also had the wellbeing brochure that they could access any help, because we're just conscious that we can't always reach the people on the front line.
No, because that's right. And you can't assume that it's got technology, can you?
No, you can't.
So earlier in the conversation, you were talking about people being more effective working from home.
Yeah.
You've obviously had real evidence of that.
Yes.
In certain areas.
Yes.
How have you upskilled your managers to be more effective managing remotely?
So we've run what we've called ways of working campaigns. So as part of that, we have upskilled our managers to have one-to-ones, a different type of one-to-ones, which focus. So we've run two one-to-one sessions with our people that we've asked to work from home. So the line managers have attended two sessions, one where we've taught them through how to have a conversation about people's well-being, how to have the conversation about what's not being said as well as what is being said, how to have a conversation about how people want to work going forward. Do they want to carry on working from home? Do they want to come into an office? Do they want to do a hybrid? Do they want to have true flexible working going forward? We've also developed some training sessions for them on how to manage people remotely. So they had that to begin with, and we've run a one-to-one session then we've managed to reach about 4,500 people in total with our first one-to-ones. we're through September, we ran our second one-to-ones just to confirm how people wanted to work, to check back in again on their well-being, and also then to see what equipment people needed to be able to work from home effectively.
Yes.
And what we found is most people need a chair, or they might need a fold-up table to be able to work. So what we're currently doing is checking back in with people, confirming their new work arrangements, which might be that they'll work hybrid. The majority of people will work in a hybrid way. We've only got 600 people who want to come back to an office full time.
Which is roughly sort of 10%-ish, isn't it?
About 10%, And then we've also developed some coaching, some training on how to work more inclusively. So that will be rolled out in November. So that we've gone through the kind of have better one-to-ones with people around their well-being and how they're working and how to work better as a team. Because one of the things that came out from the survey and the ways of working conversations is they miss working collaboratively, and they miss people. So you can do that more effectively over Zoom conversations if you get your team together. You can replicate that. It's not the same as a human meeting, but you can do it. So we're rolling out some coaching in November on how to work more collaboratively, create a more inclusive environment for people to work, and that's also related to our inclusion agenda, so that we can start to drive a more inclusive organisation. So and also our managers, they're quite traditional, so they probably wouldn't have had personal one-to-ones with the frequency that we're asking them to do them now. So we've actually embarked on that journey, and they're enjoying it and they want to keep doing it, but we have to prompt them a little bit. So what we're doing is with the November ones, we're designing it around inclusivity, so that we're giving them a reason to do it. So they'll do it, and then what we're hoping is it becomes just the way we do things around here. But I think we'll have to keep prompting them until maybe the middle of next year, when it becomes just the way they do it. So that's a real benefit.
So again, I mean, this is almost like a positive. Yes. Hasn't it? Because actually,
really positive.
You're upskilling people. You're getting people to think differently. And, and from my own sort of history with Amey, I would have said it's quite a traditional business. And
yes, it is.
This has forced you to look differently, and clearly everybody's embraced it, which I think is excellent. So pre-COVID, was there a flexible approach to working, or has that come in because of COVID?
We did have a flexible working approach, but we weren't. It wasn't really endorsed in the way that it is now. So the previous chief executive certainly supported flexible working, and what we found is that we did have about 1,000 people working flexibly. We didn't have it recorded anyway, because our systems aren't great, so we didn't really know what we had. What we will have going forward is about 2,500 people working true flexible hours, but we'll have about 5,000 people who will be working remotely. And we would not have had that before. And Amanda is a real advocate of working remotely, because she can see the real value in it. And actually there's a huge cost benefit to people working remotely. We will be able to drive quite a significant sum to the bottom line in 2021 by having more people working remotely. What we have to make sure is that we protect people's mental health.
That was going to be my question about that.
Yes, that's the big issue that I think we're facing. So we've appointed a new Wellbeing manager, a lady called Emma Shakespeare, and she joined us on Monday actually, and she's got some fantastic experience. So she's going to come in and review what we're doing. We've got about 250 Wellbeing ambassadors and first aiders, and that is significant for a business of our type.
Yes.
And they're very effective, but I think we can probably do more than we are doing, certainly on the ground, and spotting problems quicker, because we still do have absence around stress and mental health, and what we want to do is be more preventative. And now we've opened the eyes of the managers to this whole new world. I think we can be much more effective with Emma's help.
I think mental health has been, obviously it's been on the agenda for some years now, but I think this
Yes,
is at the forefront, and I think
it
people
has.
are more open about discussing it.
Yes.
I mean, interesting, my own team, we, obviously worked initially from home, and like nobody has to come in. It's not mandatory, but I'm in and Hannah's come in because people want to have some contact.
Yes.
But equally, one of the questions I was asking at the beginning all the time was, tell me out of 10 how you're feeling. It was a very basic question.
Yeah, it's good.
And because I think if you can make them feel, you need to be vulnerable yourself. I think that was definitely doing that. But also that it's safe for them to say how they're really feeling.
Yeah, it was
they get the best out of them.
It was the theme of our National Inclusion Week, actually. So in our National Inclusion Week, we joined the national theme, which was each one, reach one, but we themed it around just talk to somebody that you wouldn't normally talk to. Just give them a call and see how they're doing. So we linked it with mental health, because we know that that's what people are struggling with. They're struggling with having somebody to talk to. So we just asked, we themed it around inclusion, and we talked to people of our ethnic minority groups and our LGBTQ groups. But we also said, widen it, talk to people who, if you're working in an office, phone somebody who works on the front line, ask them how they are. Ask them how things are going. Have they got any worries? Do they need to talk to you about anything? And just talk to somebody you wouldn't normally speak to, and make sure they're okay. Because how do you feel when somebody picks up the phone and just says to you, I've got no agenda, I just want to see how you're doing? I said, you feel 10 feet tall, don't you?
Yeah, you do.
So that was our whole kind of theme of National Inclusion Week. And with Emma's help, we carry that on.
Do you think as a society we've become kinder, actually, in a way?
Yes. I think the Caroline Flack suicide has really stopped people in their tracks. And there was an awful lot of campaigning around being kind. And irrespective of what you think of what led up to Caroline's decision, I think that was a real showstopper for people in terms of, oh my goodness, you really don't know what's going on behind that smile. And November for us is Men's Health Week, because we obviously employ a lot of men, and one of the organisations we're partnering with sent me a video, and the guy that we're partnering with tried to commit suicide 4 times, and he's written a story about it, and we're using it in Men's Health Week because it is one of the biggest killers in the construction industry.
I was going to say, you told me that before, didn't you?
It is, yes. Yeah. And we just don't know, and we have experienced it in the last year or so, where people who work for us have taken their life, and we have got to get the messages out there, really, that it's okay to talk.
Interesting enough, I mean, slightly off, but I do think the new generation, like obviously you've got girls, boys.
Yes.
And my boys are much better at talking. They talk to me and tell me how they feel. And even my husband, I mean, he's 61.
Yes.
He can't deal with that. He's like, just don't talk about feelings. So I actually feel, to a certain extent, us as mothers, our generation of children have been taught it's okay not to be okay.
They have, and it's amazing to see the difference. And our average age in Amey is 46, and it's amazing to see the difference in the way the young people deal with health issues and the way the older generation deal with it. And we're trying to encourage more young people to become wellbeing ambassadors and really get to talk to some of the older generation. And it's actually interesting to see some of the older generation think it's okay to have banter that's just not acceptable around women. And we challenged it with one guy who's working on the front line, and he said something that was inappropriate. And we said to him, have you got girls? And he said, I've got 3 girls. And we said to him, well, if a man said that to your daughters, what would you do? He said, I'd punch them. And I said, well, there you go. Why did you think it was appropriate to say it in the workplace? And he went, oh my goodness, I didn't even think about it.
No.
And it's challenging all of these traditional ways of thinking, whether it's banter, whether it's, you know, you're feeling really awful, talk to somebody.
Yeah,
We
no,
will
I
help
agree.
you.
Looking sort of forward a bit, I think when we spoke, you said you had to look at budgets, but I think
Yes.
I'm right in thinking, you told me an element of budget had been donated to care homes, and because you would save money and travel and etc.
Yes.
So is that right? Did I get that right?
Yeah, we had a significant amount of PPE that we had brought in, masks, aprons, and all sorts of things. So we donated a significant amount of PPE to care homes. But what we did was we asked our employees to nominate care homes that were important to them. So
Lovely, yeah.
our employees nominated care homes, obviously where they'd got relatives or friends, and we donated a lot of PPE, but we also donated about £300,000 to the Trussell Trust food banks, because we support them.
Yes.
And Furloughing had a fund, a hardship fund, and they gave us £300,000, which we moved through to the Trussell Trust, because it's really important to make sure. I can't believe I volunteered myself for the Trussell Trust. I helped set up a food bank in the area that I lived in previously to before I moved, and I just couldn't believe that, you know, we were so busy. But in this day and age, it's not who you think is going to be going to a food bank. It's people like you and I who have lost their job, who don't have enough savings behind them, who choose to pay the mortgage or the rent, and then there's no money left for food because benefits don't kick in for 6 or 8 weeks. So you make your choices, you keep the roof over your head and the heating on, and then unfortunately there's no money left for food.
No.
And that's, you know, it's very, very sad. And, you know, so I think it's really important that, you know, we keep these charitable kind of places going in order to help people when they're in times of need.
So in terms of the talent in the business, do you have any concerns about retaining talent?
I do, actually, because I think that we're still a traditional business. We still have some traditional thinking, and it's still hard to get promoted in our organisation because people aren't moving on. So as part of our inclusion strategy, we're looking to do a bit of displacement, positive displacement. So not taking people out of roles for the sake of it, but where we've got a strong bid pipeline, we're looking to say to people who've held a role for maybe 15 or 20 years, would you go and work on that bid so that we can move some of our emerging talent through into a middle manager role? Because otherwise there's nowhere for them to go because the roles are blocked. So I do have some concerns that we haven't got the ability to move people through quickly enough. Where we have, so we've got a couple of people, like we've got a young man called Glenn who was a graduate. He joined us about 5 years ago, and he's now a head of HR. We've got a young woman who was a graduate, and she joined us maybe 10 years ago, and she's now a head of HR, but she went through an operational route and is now a head of HR. So we can accelerate the talent through. We've also got some account directors who joined out of sector and have just absolutely smashed every KPI, you know, sales, people, KPIs, safety KPIs, and they are accelerating. But we've got to create the positions for them to come in and move people who just love working for Amey, who just never going to go anywhere else. But we've got to do that positive displacement to allow our really good up and coming talent to move through.
I think possibly though, with everything that you've been talking about in terms of what you've done to support people, you will have created a high degree of loyalty as well.
Yes.
And I think from a recruitment perspective, one of the first questions that I get asked is, how has that business managed COVID? That's very important to people. And, you know, clearly you guys have been flying the flag. So, you know, hopefully that will help you in terms of retention, but also, you know, attracting new talent.
I think so. We've been recognised by the Cabinet Office as being, you know, an exemplar which for us is amazing. You know, it's a really good place to be. It's a high standard to continue to achieve.
Yes.
But with Amanda,
No pressure, Carol, no pressure.
Well, with Amanda Fisher and Michael Burgess as the HR director, really thinking about, you know, people first, it's you know, it makes it a lot easier to be able to put strategies in place.
You mentioned to me as well that you've moved much more, because obviously learning and development is an area that probably a lot of businesses have put on hold. But I think when we spoke, you said you're moving much more to an online learning, and although doing that, it's accelerated again. So you'll that's actually a program's come forward a lot quicker than it would have done had COVID not come into play.
That's right. Yeah. And I have some concerns about it. So I think that it's right for its time. People can access far more training online than they could have before. We've got a couple of really excellent management development trainers in our business, and they've been very busy helping with both communications campaigns and the ways of working, the mental health. They've been involved in all of that, in doing training programs that run alongside everything that we've put in place. We haven't just said, here's a campaign, we've put a program in for managers to help them with it. So that's all accelerating. But what we find, some things like helping managers to become more inclusive, actually you need to see the whites of their eyes when you're talking to them about that, because that's a behavioural change. Yes, so some of the behavioural change pieces we will still run face-to-face when we're allowed to, because it's really about saying this is non-negotiable. So you may have these beliefs, you can have them outside of work, that's fine, but inside of work, it's not negotiable. No. This is where we're moving to. We have to change, because we have to change the makeup of our organisation if we're going to meet the client expectations of the future, because they're moving to a more inclusive space. We have to catch up with them.
You have to, yeah, you do. So finally, obviously there was an announcement a couple of weeks ago from Boris that, that now, you know, work from home again if you can. Yeah. Obviously, you know, as we spoke at the beginning, there's more lockdowns in place. Yeah. Is there a 3-month vision for how Amey's going to look in terms of as a business for the next 3 months? Is it going to be just basically remote, apart from the people who are exceptional? You know, has anything changed from that perspective?
Yeah, we had started to slowly open our offices, and we've had to put that on hold. So again, we had started to say we're going to go to 20% occupancy and maybe up to 40% occupancy, 50% occupancy in January. But we've had to put the brakes on that. And what we've said is exactly that. So we've said, look, we are going to be working from home now for the next 6 months again. We've slowed down the opening of the offices. What we have said, though, is that where there is a need for innovation or creativity in some of our consulting area, that we will open offices up to enable that, because part of the kind of difference in that business is the innovation. And yes, if we want to grow that, we need to get people back together. And the majority of the young people in that business who are in shared housing, we need to get them into an office. But we have to do that in a COVID safe way. So all of our offices have been redesigned to be COVID secure. We've put in place some wellbeing strategies and collaboration strategies so that they're not just opening the office, they have to then have a communications hub. They've got to have a wellbeing hub so that they take care of each other when they're actually in there, because the usual opportunities to just mingle in the tea room and mingle in the cafe for lunch, they're gone. They're not there. So we've got to create something else to replace that. Otherwise, people are going to feel as isolated in the office as they do at home. Yeah. But we have said that, you know, we won't be opening offices anytime soon. And we've actually instructed because people are trying to do it with external venues. So we've instructed our booking service to say that if anybody tries to book a venue for more than 15 people, that it's automatically rejected, because we've got to keep COVID secure. So one of the things I talked to Emma about is we really have to run a serious campaign now on keeping people motivated and their mental health safe through the next 6 months, because that's what's going to suffer.
Thank you so much to Carol and to Nicky for giving us all a really insightful listen there. And hopefully we've learnt something, and also hopefully it's highlighted what a fabulous place Amey is to work. So this is our podcast for this week. Any comments, please do use the comment box below. If you want to get regular updates on our podcast, please subscribe through YouTube. And also you can follow Signet on LinkedIn and Facebook, where we publish these regularly. I hope everybody is well and have a great day.